Thank you very much for this kind introduction, Katja. I will speak about Hungary, but many of the themes that I'm going to talk about are actually going to resonate very much with what you've heard from Tiago and the other contributions. The subtitle of the program is the Budapest Report on Persecuted Christians, and it's a very good starting point to talk about the state of affairs of religious freedom in Hungary, and in a climate of illiberal democracy. Because the Budapest Report on Persecuted Christians is a regular publication by one of the many offices of one of the most famous offices of the state, that is a secretariat seeking to combat the persecution of Christians worldwide. This is a program that was launched by the Hungarian government in 2017, and after presentations at the UN attracted quite the global prominence. Initially, it was launched in order to counter the bad PR that Hungary attracted in its response to the global migration crisis. However, it very quickly, when it became clear that it had attraction, especially in American Republican donor circles, it became slightly larger than its own self. And it fits into a broader intellectual agenda that you see in Hungary, because Hungary is not simply a proud illiberal democracy, but since 2018, it has been actually marketing itself as a proud illiberal Christian democracy. It was actually on occasion of a memorial for no one else than Helmut Kohl that Prime Minister Viktor Orbán chastised German Christian Democrats and set out an agenda for action for saving true Christian democracy. The elements of this political program combine and neatly interlink constitutional, political, and policy dimensions, which ultimately seek to bring not only constitutional change, but also culture change. So the way this works in practice is, of course, through constitutional amendments and sometimes controversial legislation. I argue that the invisible force or the resource for building illiberal Christian democracy is in narratives of Christian victimhood. These narratives of victimhood create both a pre- and a post-political belonging, a story of suffering, imaginary and real suffering, sometimes suffering which is very remote from wherever the political arguments are made. Christian victimhood lends serious moral gravity and urgency to illiberal political ambitions, and it works very well on the local, the European, and the global plane. Very often, as we see with the Hungarian government's actions, narratives of Christian victimhood are being deployed to protect the rights, the interests, the values, and the preferences of the local majority. Because rest assured, Hungary demographically happens to remain a Christian majority country. In terms of what you may have read in the report about what the Secretariat for Persecuted Christians is doing, the latest number is roughly 500,000 people who Hungary, through this program, helped to stay in their homelands or to return there. So this is certainly not an international assistance program to help the integration of refugees of religious persecution around the world. And it's a perfect networking tool because the Hungarian government is using good occasions for organizing conferences on Christian persecution. In 2019, Prime Minister Orbán welcomed at the second international conference the Hungarian government 650 attendees from 40 countries to address a global crisis. And it turns out that this is also a perfect networking opportunity between the Hungarian government and also Orthodox churches, including the Russian government, on the top level of Prime Minister Orbán discussing the matter with President Putin one-to-one. Now, how these narratives of victimhood translate into political and constitutional practice? It's surprisingly easy to script Christian victimhood stories and identity lines into constitutional language. And it's also a very easy fuel, not only for a cultural transformation, but also for patronage politics on the local, the European, and also the global level. Most of you must have heard about the Hungarian fundamental law, which is the most important print of illiberal democracy and now illiberal Christian democracy in Hungary, placing Hungary in the legacy of King Saint Stephen, bringing Hungary to a millennium trajectory of Christian Europe. The most recent amendment to the Hungarian fundamental law is an amendment that on the one hand declares that a mother shall be a woman and a father shall be a man. This is a very important addition to the protection of marriage as a union of one man and one woman. And also in 2020, the Hungarian fundamental law was enacted specifically to guarantee the right of a child to self-identity corresponding to sex at birth. Here I'm quoting from the English translation of a constitutional amendment. And also a constitutional obligation to ensure the upbringing of children in accordance with values based on the constitutional identity and Christian culture of our country, end of quote. So there is plenty of constitutional script, which is then supported by global opportunities for exchanging experiences with how best to promote traditional family values and the traditional family. The Hungarian government regularly organizes in Budapest demographic summits with very prominent international speakers from all around the world. Hungary has also been a key interlocutor for an initiative of the Trump-Pence government, that is the Geneva Consensus Declaration protecting the traditional family. Now, you may believe that this declaration under the Biden administration has little traction, except you probably are aware of several summits that are organized in order to promote both the consensus declaration and collect more and more signatures as the years go by. This is certainly an international movement that has very strong local supporters. In Europe, actually, the strongest supporter at the moment happens to be Poland. Now, an anchor point for the type of persecution narrative and illiberal Christian identity building project, which the Hungarian government is very much part of, is mobilizing support against the Istanbul Convention and potentially also promoting a convention on the rights of the family, the draft of which has been prepared by a Polish think tank, Ordo Juris. What independent journalists have been tracing is not only the wild success of the Hungarian-Polish signature drive to prevent the European Union acceding to the Istanbul Convention, but also the source of funding that merged public funds and foreign funding in support of this particular campaign. Now, the counter-convention has already that has been initiated by Poland and supported by these very active global networks that allegedly fight against the persecution of Christians globally, but nonetheless also speak the language of human rights in terms of protecting traditional family values, has been debunked by several academic publications. However, what I can see is very often this research that addresses the fakery of the convention, if you wish, happens to be either published in studies, in area studies journals, such as the recent special issue of Osztályról-Parecht, or by scholars who study the culture wars from an LGBTQI perspective. So this is how I would like to link this presentation back to the opening presentation of Heiner Bielefeld, where he was drawing attention to debunking some of the strong rights language that is used in the name of religion in order to restrict the rights of others, and especially in order to promote the preferences of local political majorities. Hungary is certainly a champion of this trend, and I'm happy to share further experiences of how to counter these influences on the local, European, and international levels. Thank you very much for your attention.